A guten Erev Shabbos. We are in an in-between moment this Shabbat, right in the middle of the Yoms. The Yoms are the commemorative days of 20th century events that come right after Pesach. There's first Yom HaShoah, followed by Yom HaZikaron, and Yom HaAtzmaut. It's an out-of-ordinary calendar arrangement this year, and Yom HaAtzmaut actually falls on Shabbat. So it's being moved back a couple of days so that the celebration does not intrude on Shabbat or even Shabbos preparations, which is nice. It means you don't have to choose. Yom HaShoah was also moved back a day to Thursday rather than Friday this week, the 27th of Nisan, when it's usually observed. It seems there was already a Holocaust Remembrance Day in 1949 after the establishment of the State of Israel. Keep in mind that there were still Jews in DP camps, displaced persons camps in Germany until 1952, and that the last two DP camps were closed in 1957, 1959, believe it or not. About 1951, the Knesset took up the idea of establishing a national remembrance day for the Holocaust, the Chorban, as it was called in Yiddish, which was the source of much contentiousness. You might not be surprised to hear. First of all, what should it be called? Yom HaShoah, Holocaust Day. Yom HaShoah v'mered getaot, Day of remembering the Holocaust and the ghetto uprisings. The Warsaw Ghetto uprising was only the largest, but the Bialystok Ghetto uprising also got people's attention. In history, there were reports of armed resistance to the liquidation of the Vilna Ghetto, the Mir Ghetto, in Kremenets, in Częstochowa, in Sosnowiec, the Tarnów Ghetto. Of the 400 ghettos in Europe throughout the war, during the war years, at least 100 had documented resistance underground movements. It seems like we've settled on Yom HaShoah v'Hagvura for the time being, day of Holocaust and heroism remembrance. Then there was an argument over when it should be. Some said the date should be on the date of the beginning of the Warsaw Ghetto uprising, the first day of Pesach. Others said not in the month of Nisan. We don't make sad things in the month of Nisan, make it in the month of Iyar, the following month. But that got in the way of the new Yom HaAtzmaut celebrations, Israel Independence Day. The Knesset compromised around 1959 and chose the 27th of Nisan, a date which probably satisfied no one. In the 1960s, restaurants and bars were supposed to be closed in respect of the day. Not sure if that's still the case. But in recent years, there has certainly been more interest in hearing the accounts of survivors, now that they're dwindling in number, and maybe people are more ready and able to hear those very painful accounts. There's been a move away from ceremony in Israel, although that does still exist, moving toward gathering in smaller, more intimate groups to hear people's stories in a more personal setting. Yom HaAtzmaut and Yom HaZikaron, which precedes it, the commemorations of Israel's Declaration of Independence in 1948, together with a day to recall fallen soldiers, really must of necessity go hand in hand. The people was so tiny, the losses so deep, and the sacrifices of those fighters so essential to the founding of the state. It really could not be any other way than to have a day of remembrance for the fallen soldiers rolling right into a day of celebration of the first Jewish sovereignty in the land of Israel in 2,000 years. In some countries, it's done differently. In Canada, Remembrance Day is the same day as the end of the Great War, Armistice Day, November 11th. In Poland, November 11th marks the re-emergence of the state after World War I. So there, it's all about Independence Day. In America, Veterans Day, November 11th, is about appreciating living and dead servicemen and women. But Memorial Day is a separate holiday, which has come completely unmoored from its origins as Decoration Day, the Veterans Day for the American Civil War, which took place in 1868 for the first time. Nowadays, Memorial Day is just the first official day of barbecue and gin and tonic season, much like Victoria Day here a week earlier. By the way, Victoria Day may be remembered by some who were paying attention before 1958 as Commonwealth Day. But if you've really been with the program for a long time, you'll remember that it was once called Empire Day. But back to our Inyana de Yom, the topic of the moment. This week, Yom HaZikaron, the Remembrance Day for Israeli soldiers killed in battle, and following it immediately, Yom HaAtzmaut, Israel Independence Day, will move ahead a few days because the calendar dates fall on Friday and Shabbat, the end of this week and next Shabbos. So the Tekes Ma'avar, the transition ceremony marking the move from one to the next, will take place Wednesday evening. That will be marked in Toronto, as it is every year, with a community-wide program organized by Mizrahi. If you've been there in the past, you'll know you want to be there. And if you haven't, you really should plan to come this year and show your support. You do have to sign up because we live in the security age, and it's so important this year that everyone in the community turn out for this celebration and show of community unity, solidarity, and support for Israel. And in this very same moment, between Yom HaShoah this past week and Yom HaZikaron and Yom HaAtzmaut and the week to come, we are reading and talking about Parshat Shmini on the 8th day, because that was the first full day of business for the Mishkan, the portable shul in the desert. An exciting day, a grand opening. Aaron HaKohen, the high priest's first full day on the job. There must have been quite a bit of excitement in the air. This moment was the culmination of the Jewish people's building project, where everyone donated what they were able to make the thing happen. At minimum, everyone put in 3 silver half shekels so that each Jewish family would know that they have a share in constructing this amazing dwelling place for God out there in the desert. It was also a sign of the acceptance of our teshuvah, our atonement, and reconnecting with God after the sin of the golden calf. This was the remedy for sin, which is something that distances us from God. Building and serving and coming closer to God. It's the recipe we still trust and rely on to this very day. And yet, right in the middle of the joy, the ecstasy, the excitement of dedicating the Mishkan, the tabernacle, tragedy struck. 2 of Aaron's 4 sons, Nadav and Avihu, inspired by the moment and obviously looking for a spiritual high, went off script. They brought an Eish Zara, Asher Lo Tziva Otam, a foreign fire, one which had not been part of the commandment of service in the newly inaugurated Mishkan. What happened? They saw the earlier offerings that their father Aaron brought. They saw how a fire came down from heaven and consumed those offerings. So the 2 brothers brought their own fire pans and brought an offering, a fire offering of their own initiative. And a fire came down from heaven and burned their souls, which left their bodies. The 2 brothers died on the spot. 1 second here. Aren't we in favor of religious initiative? Is there only one correct way to serve God? Is that what this is all about? How about this? A few weeks ago, in introducing the idea of offerings, we said a korban is from the word karov, to come close. Adam ki yakriv. The 2nd verse in the book of Leviticus says, a person who wants to come close, mikem korban laHashem. The offering has to come from you, from the person. So Nadav and Avihu took this idea literally, maybe a little too literally. They made themselves into the korban. They became the offering. What did they get? They got exactly what they desired. They became very, very close to God. So close, in fact, that their bodies could no longer contain their souls. When the soul departs, Yetziat Haneshama, that's a phrase we use for death, the exit of the soul from the body. So these 2 young Kohanim, Nadav and Avihu, got what they wanted. The problem is, that is not what we are supposed to want. They wanted to be free souls, unlimited and unencumbered by physical bodies, like angels. We should want to get close to God, but not so close that our souls leave our bodies. Close, but we should not stop being who we are, living, breathing human beings. They got exactly what they bargained for. Rabbi Sachs tells a story of when he was a shul rabbi once upon a time. He said that there was an older gentleman who regularly davened in his shul, the Marble Arch Shul in London. The man was a survivor of the Shoah, and he had questions for the rabbi. Questions, questions, questions. He probably cornered poor Rabbi Sachs every other week at the Kiddush with his questions. And Rabbi Sachs had to admit he didn't have all the answers. At a certain point, this man, this survivor, stopped asking, which made Rabbi Sachs nervous. So he approached his congregant and he said, apparently you've deduced that your rabbi simply doesn't have the answers, but please don't give up on me. To which the elderly survivor replied, no, Rabbi, that's not it. It's not you at all. It's this. I'm convinced that there are answers to all my questions, but I've realized that I'm not yet ready to go to the place where all the answers are. I'd rather stay a bit longer here where all the questions are. In other words, we don't have the knowledge to answer the questions or the words to articulate them. Perhaps that's why, upon the deaths of his two of his sons, Aaron remained silent. Vayidom Aharon, it says in the Torah. Aaron was silent. Moshe's enigmatic statement on the event was to say that this is what God meant when he said, Bekrovai Akadesh, I will be sanctified by those closest to me. What does that mean? God wants or desires somehow the deaths of the holy, the righteous? How can that possibly be? The deaths of the righteous have a value and meaning beyond the loss of life? If so, that's a hard one for us to understand. Maybe Aaron's silence is most fitting in the face of terrible loss. It's not unlike the moment we're in of counting the Omer. This is something that we've done since the Torah commanded it 3,337 years ago. We have literally counted the days from Pesach until Shavuot with anticipation of good things to come. But at a certain moment in history, this time period became associated with loss and death and sadness, because thousands of students of Rabbi Akiva died for a 33-day period during this time. Some say it was a political uprising, a revolt. The Gemara in Yevamos says that it was because lo nahagu kavod ze bazeh. The students did not conduct themselves with honor one to the other. Did not conduct themselves with honor to each other. How on earth could that possibly be? They were students of Rabbi Akiva, whose main message was V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, like the Torah says, love your fellow as you love yourself. Ze klal gadol b'Torah. This is the great principle of the Torah. How could thousands of students of this great teacher, this rabbi for the ages, how could they miss the main teaching of their teacher, the klal gadol b'Torah? So much so that they were worthy of ultimate punishment for their failing in interpersonal relations? It's hard to understand, to say the least. These are all a lot of questions that we seem not to have all the answers to. Why the Holocaust? How could it happen? What do we do after the Shoah? Why do the righteous suffer and die? Why can't the Jews have our own place to live in peace with the neighbors, just like pretty much every other one of the 195 countries on the planet? Why is joy so often tempered by sadness, almost as a rule? Darosh v'kibel schar, says the Gemara in Chulin. Study it, try to wrap your mind around it, ask questions, learn to live with ambiguity and inconclusivity, and let that be your reward. Maybe one day we will know all the answers. Not here, not yet. A good Shabbos. In Shul this Shabbat we will bless the new month of Iyar, which begins Sunday night. The reappearance of the moon will take place in Jerusalem, the eternal and undivided capital of Israel, Sunday evening at 8:30 p.m. and two parts. Rosh Chodesh is Monday and Tuesday. Die Moiled wird sein Sonntag bei Nacht, 8:30 mit 2 Chalakim. Rosh Chodesh wird sein Montag und Dienstag. A good Shabbos, a good Chodesh.